You're listening to the Famvestor Podcast. If you're looking to raise your family with intention, gain financial independence, and live a life of true freedom, you're in the right place. Join us as we explore together how to create thriving families, because strong families are the cornerstone for a world at peace.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Famvestor Podcast. So today, I'm super excited. We have someone who really jives with that story, our mission here. We have Susan Elliot. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So Susan is awesome. She's a world traveler. She's paddled in over 300 rivers across the world. She's done full-time RV living. She's a real estate investor, a different kind of real estate investing that I'm very interested in that we'll learn about shortly from her. And, she's into things like wild schooling, teaching her kids through nature, all about financial freedom for the family. And she's founder and CMO for Flow State Investing. So I'm just super excited to dive into her story, her journey, and just what she had, the resources she has to share with us and all of you. So thank you, Susan, for being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here to meet both of you in person and talk to you all about the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so many interesting things in your bio that I was just like picking out. I know you love the water, and there's just your journey in reading it seems so interesting. So I was wondering, like, do you have a very unique upbringing, like in terms of family, finance, and freedom, and the life you're kind of leading now with, these passive income streams, this adventurous lifestyle? I think you took your daughter when she was 5 months old on like a multi-day kayak camping trip. So yeah, just where does your origin story begin?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think that it would be really easy to think that I grew up in that kind of outdoor adventure and wilderness style of outdoor adventure. And I absolutely didn't. I grew up in suburbia in eastern Pennsylvania, and we kind of went hiking every once in a while, a couple times a year. But what happened was that I found the river through just a friend. I went rafting with a friend, and I saw other kids my age floating in kayaks and pointing people where they needed to go. And I thought I could do that. That looks like a great job. Or, and I saw this sort of behind the scenes too, when we got back to the outfitter center, and I saw how they interacted with people of all ages and guides of all ages, and they were taking leadership roles, and it just looked really fun to me. And so I think that I became a river guide in high school, and I learned how to kayak in high school. I learned how to guide rafts. And so it was a skill set, but it also opened up the world to me. All of a sudden, people said, "Oh, I've got friends on this river down in West Virginia, down in, out in Utah, and all these places. We should go on a road trip. We should go see this." And it was my passport to the world and to see it. And so all through college, I did that as well. I also studied science because my family upbringing was like, get a job to take care of you, just make sure you get that job, secure that job so that it takes care of you for the rest of your life. And something about the juxtaposition of that, and then the freedom of being able to work as a river guide, explore the world, invest in those relationships, the people that I met along the way, and the communities that we built. Sometimes during the season, we would all camp out for months at a time and share meals all the time. And it was just like my river family was my secondary family. And I got to guide all over the world. I taught for a traveling high school that took us to China and Peru. I met my husband on the Yangtze River, and it just kind of, fell out from there. As far as like, it became our life, the river was. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you actually met your husband in China, right? And he's American, I assume?
He is. Yes,
wow.
He is. He was over there guiding for the only whitewater rafting company in China at the time. And they only take Chinese citizens out, except when they're hosting this paddling school that I was working for. But he and I subsequently went back many more times to guide and took, like little Chinese kids out on rivers in their home countries, and built there. These are city kids from Beijing who maybe never got to leave Beijing, or never saw their own country, this extraordinary country, like up on the Tibetan plateau and the headwaters of these major rivers. So it was a pretty neat thing to share with my husband.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Wow. Yeah, it really sounds like the river kind of sculpted your life in a way. You found a passion for it, and you found that that's your calling, and that was an environment that just kind of embraced you, and you took it on full-heartedly and it became your life, which I think is so awesome to have a passion like that. A lot of people go many years or even their whole lifetime without ever finding something that they're truly passionate about. And I think it's so powerful when you tap into that and you live a life that's truly fulfilling.
Exactly. I didn't sort of have this financial breakthrough. So it did, I would never regret that time I spent as a guide and as a teacher. And we wrote a guidebook and we lived in our RV and paddled rivers. And I had my daughter still kind of at the end of that phase of our life, but it also instilled some pretty negative baggage around money. So this whole like dirtbag concept of it's not valuable to pursue the making money for the act of just making money. So I always felt like I was always finding work, or I was always just kind of scrambling for money. So the finance piece I had to plug in later, and real estate investing kind of plugged it in for me, and it really made sense. And it was the real estate investing combined with the idea that I could control my road to financial freedom. I could control my road to retirement. I could make it happen sooner than I think. And that opened up the world for me, because all of a sudden I realized if I work hard at this now, I'll be able to take my family on more of those adventures later. Whereas otherwise you're sort of like succumbing to this, well, like now is the phase of my life where I just work for 40 years and I'm not starting until I'm 30. Right. So but I don't regret the time that I spent traveling around and gaining those experiences and that competence in the wild, being able to have that. But it wasn't everything. And so being, having a little bit more financial awareness these days is like, it feels much more whole. Like I'm a much more whole person than I was then.
Right. Yeah, I'm curious to go into the financial freedom through the real estate investing, but I'm curious, did you actually get your paper degree? And I'm wondering, did you pursue that?
I did. Okay. I mean, I got my undergrad, and then I said, I'm never going back to school. I'm going to be a traveling kayaking river guide and high school teacher and river advocate. And I was a sponsored athlete, so I got to go to events and give talks and really get involved with the nonprofit side of it. I did a lot of advocacy, so it wasn't just kind of being a guide everywhere. But I really liked in whitewater kayaking.
Oh, I mean,
in sort of expedition kayaking. I did a little bit of racing, but it was more of just like being a voice for the paddling community, and also I was a little bit more of like the voice for the advocacy side of why we need to protect our rivers, why it's really important to have free flowing clean water, why we need access to it so we can recreate, so we can have the mental health benefits of being outside. So I kind of took that side of it a lot. And, but eventually, I had my daughter, and I realized like, okay, I'm really exhausted from financial anxiety. I'm exhausted from not knowing if I'm ever going to retire, or knowing that I don't have enough saved, and so in my head, I thought, oh, well, I better go back to school and get a master's degree in engineering. So I go back to school, and I also simultaneously saw river engineers working on systems that I played in. And I saw dams coming out. I saw fish habitat being expanded and wetlands being restored. And so I went back to school for that. I mean, that was just a natural step for me to be able to go back. So I get my master's degree in engineering. And now I'm working at an engineering firm, and it's my dream job. All I get to do is like play in river systems and restore them, make them healthier, right? Wow. And I work with the best people on the planet who all like to float and fish and do great, but something was still missing. And it was that like, I still don't have control over my time. I'm missing my daughter. I'm spending 40 hours a week in front of computers sometimes. And it just like, I realized I did have an entrepreneurial drive that was my paddling career and was all of that work that I pieced together. And that entrepreneurial drive combined with, savvy business sense and understanding how to make money, or an understanding that you can make money and still be the person that you are and be a more amplified person that you are. It was really transformational for me to kind of have that mindset shift. If that makes sense.
No, that's awesome.
I'm curious, at this point, are you still working for the engineering firm? You are. And
I am still working, and I'm down to about 30 hours a week, which is really nice. And I'm in this space where it's nice to have the health insurance benefits, but and I really do like the work that I'm doing, but I anticipate that my company Flow State Investing will ramp up a good bit here in the next year, and that scenario will probably quickly change.
I mean, I think that it is so liberating in a way to come to a place financially where you feel secure enough to say, I'm doing this job or this career because I choose to. I'm passionate about it. I find purpose in it, and that's why I'm here. Not because I have to be to earn the paycheck and to, maintain my lifestyle. And if I were to lose this job, everything would crumble, and the anxiety that comes from that, as you were talking about earlier. And so many people are in that vicious hamster wheel of life, where they don't feel in control, and they're not doing their job because they're passionate about it, but because it's more fear driven or security driven. So I think that having a job that you truly love and truly care about, and having that freedom to say, I'm doing this because I want to, not because I have to, is so empowering. And that's really something to strive for. And a lot of people are searching for ways to get to that place. Even if they love what they do, they don't feel that secure. So I guess that is what feeds into your investing side of it, because I'm assuming that is what led you to the security to feel like I'm doing this because I want to, not just because I have to.
Yeah, so well said. So well said. I found like a weight lifted off me when I work at the engineering job now, because I do like to do that work. I want to do it a little bit less, not gonna lie, but I do like to do it. But knowing that I have control of my systems and my financial freedom kind of trajectory, and I know where we're going, and that has lifted the weight as far as making this job the end all be all, and I do feel more purpose. That's very well said.
Yeah, so why don't we jump into the financial freedom side of it, how you stumbled upon it, what it is exactly that you do, and how it works for you and your family?
Yeah, great question. So I am in note investing currently, and I got here from a couple of different styles of real estate investing that I dabbled in on my own, which I'm happy to go into, but I really like note investing. So first of all, I know a lot of your listeners are really educated in real estate and what it is to be a landlord and buy rentals or Airbnb-ing your property and that kind of stuff, or renovating, fixing and flipping. You've featured a lot of guests that have provided that. So what I do in the note world is I can buy and sell notes, which are the mortgages behind the property. And specifically, I'm like the fix and flipper of the note world. So I purchase non-performing notes and I flip them into performing notes. So what that looks like is I purchase a mortgage, which is essentially a set of paperwork, the documentation, your loan that you sign. I'm going to pay this much for however many years at X% interest rate. That is binded to the property with the mortgage or deed of trust as collateral. So my actual asset is the paper, but I have the house as my collateral, as my security on that investment. Now, if you have a mortgage, you're paying it monthly, you're paying it to your note owner, you're paying it to the mortgage company, right, who originated your loan. But that might have even changed hands a few times.
Right.
Often we get these letters that, now I pay Chase instead of Wells Fargo or something. And that means your note was bought and sold and you have a new note owner behind that. Now, what we do is we look for notes, and there's really a lot of due diligence that goes into this. We look for notes where the borrowers are not paying their mortgage. And you might think like, that sounds like a terrible investment.
Sounds risky.
It does, except that we're buying these at such a steep discount and we know the value of the property. And we've done such extensive due diligence on that individual person and their paperwork trail to give us clues to say that this person really does want to keep their home. And they might be willing to work with us if we can lower their monthly payment. We're essentially doing a loan modification to be able to help them stay in their homes. So we're not looking for properties that are already vacant where the borrower is just left. They don't want to deal with it anymore. I'm not trying to end up with the home, although that's our security. That's our baseline for underwriting, is that if we had to foreclose, if we end up with this house, could we sell it and still make our, kind of baseline returns that we want, that we're looking for? But it's actually in our best favor to get that borrower to reperform. It's in our best favor because you're allowing them to keep their home. I mean, you're not allowing it, they're doing it. You're just kind of enabling it. You're giving them one last effort, but
another shot at it.
Yeah. Exactly. One other shot at keeping their home. And that moment when people can keep their home and sort of like have generational wealth in their family and, have it improves their life in retirement for long-term care opportunities, all kinds of stuff. So it's a really pivotal moment too in someone's wealth building, is to keep their home, is to keep that asset.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious because, our loan just transferred recently to Mr. Cooper, and, but they keep the same terms. We had a 30-year mortgage at whatever it was, 2.75% interest rate, and they kept the same terms. But you purchased the mortgage, you're able to change the structure of that mortgage?
The terms. I am, because that borrower is in default. So because essentially they have not made payments and we're purchasing their balance with the ability to be able to rework those. So you wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't have a mortgage that would just up and change on you, right? You've locked in that rate. Mm-hmm. And that is true. You've locked in that rate, except that there's terms and conditions in the paperwork that you sign that say that if you stop paying, then some of those things don't apply anymore. And that's where we're able to rework. And sometimes even, these borrowers might be so far underwater because they've had late fees accruing every month that they're not paying. So they may now owe more than the house is worth. So they can't sell the house to get out from underneath them. That's some cases, not all of them, but we're able to even forgive some of that balance because we're purchasing these at such a steep discount. Banks don't want these on their books. They don't want to go through foreclosure. They don't want to own properties. They want to get it out off their books so that they can, originate new loans, buy new stuff. So the secondary market where I play in is like how we kind of use those pieces and change it to our benefit.
Very interesting. So how does one get into this field? Like, I wouldn't even know where you would go to try to purchase a note.
That's a great point. Well, how I got into it, as soon as we decided to purchase our first house, I was like, we're going to turn this into a rental in 2 years. And then we're going to buy another one and turn that into a rental in 2 years. And so my strategy was like every 1 to 2 years, because different loans require different primary residence requirements, we're going to move. And that's how I'm going to build it. And we started doing that, but I realized there was a lot more potential in real estate investing. And so I began to just learn all about different styles of real estate. And I helped some people manage their Airbnb portfolios. And I've invested in self-storage sort of to see if the syndication route was a good one, because I realized I wanted to create a business in real estate investing. I wanted to do it a little bit more. I was having a lot of fun, even just learning about it. Mm-hmm. So in that phase, I learned about notes and I took a course. And luckily at the same time, I met my partners in that I met them and that we realized we both all loved real estate, and we both actually had been exposed to notes. And so I had known them for 10 plus years before that. We'd actually been river guides together before we all went off into our professional lives and came back together. But so it was that combination of us saying, wow, the three of us could actually turn this into a business much easier, because you can scale a little bit if you can, I'll take on different tasks in the business. And we practiced, as in we did some Airbnb management together so that we knew we could work together really well and we were on the same page. And then we brought in a senior level consultant who was our mentor the whole time. So we took some courses on the very intricate due diligence process that's required in this, and how to find the deals, how to find the notes, because you don't just go out. You can't just go on the MLS and buy notes. You have to know kind of where you buy them. But as soon as you know where you buy them and how you evaluate them and how you manage them and what to do with them once you're through with them, your exit strategies, then you can do notes. Or you find partners who know how to do all those things and you get your money in notes that way, which is the way most people get into notes. Or most people can also buy just performing notes. Those are a little bit easier because they're just already set up to be mailbox money.
Interesting.
So I know Flow State Investing, it's a company that you can invest with. Would you, as a client, be able to be like, hey, I like that note specifically, or are you like in a portfolio of notes? You'd be like, how does that work?
Like
that's a great question.
Buy a bundle? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a pool. So we work in JV partnerships, and those are very specific notes. So we will show you a note that we found that looks really good. We'll show you the investment summary, the different exit strategies, what it could look like if we can get it to reperform, if we have to go to foreclosure. But sometimes we can do like a deed in lieu of foreclosure and some other exit strategies that save money, save time, help the borrower. So we'll show you kind of that specific asset, which is really neat for the people who they want to be passive. They don't want to take the time to learn all how to do this, but they still want to know like where their money, the assets that their money is purchasing, right? And exactly kind of what our strategy is. And in the JV partnership, you can actually see exactly what we're doing every week. We have opportunities for calls. But if you don't want to take them, then that's fine. And it can turn into a really passive style of investing too. We will be moving towards more of a pooled scenario. Next year, we're going to open up a fund model where we'll do a bulk purchase. And then we'll be able to bring investors together to be able to do that because of the syndication laws, because of the securities laws and pooling money. But, the more notes we can buy at one time, the better discount we can often negotiate. So that's a good way to offer people to a fully passive, a fully limited opportunity to get into notes. But the JV partnerships are fun too, because people can learn just a little bit more about it.
Interesting. Now, I'm curious, because I know it sounds like you're doing everything you can to help the owners or the borrowers kind of get back on track with their notes and keep their house, but I'm sure that doesn't happen all the time. Do you handle the foreclosure processes yourself? Does it get very hairy? Because I feel like that would be a very hands-on, intensive process, actually.
Yeah. And it can be, there's gonna be some human drama in there too. Mm-hmm. You're sort of, we work, so the answer there is we work with a licensed debt collector, a licensed servicer, and they're kind of our like risk mitigation middleman, nice like veil between us and the borrower. Yeah. And I say that because they know exactly what you legally can and can't say to borrowers. They track everything that is said down to the minute every time they have a conversation with the borrower. And they're able to deploy to any, if we needed to show up in a hearing in a court for a foreclosure proceeding, they're able to deploy to do that. So I'm fully location independent. But they also know how to prevent that because they're all lawyers. And they can send out legal notices immediately. So we do reach out to the borrower and we say we'd like to be willing to work with you on this, and reach back out to us by this date. It's a very systemized thing. And if they don't do that, then we issue notices. And it's sort of like, we want them to know that we mean business, that we're not their mom. This is their last chance. We are willing to work with you, but you have to call us. You have to make that effort. But luckily that's not me. I don't have to have that conversation with borrowers because I don't know.
It's a very hard conversation to have, as any landlord knows who has someone who just simply stops paying, and you have to handle that side of it.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been there with a tenant, and you just, okay, I want to help you out here. Like, let's meet in the middle. And then you're just waiting in the middle for that person to come. And It's hard. Yeah. I do appreciate having that team member, the licensed servicer, and they work in all the states that we work in. We don't buy in every state. We just buy in states where the foreclosure process is a little bit quicker. Mm-hmm. They're in non-judicial states. And so we're able to work anywhere we want.
Interesting.
I'm curious, since you're in it, and, with there's been a lot of, mortgage leniency in the last year with COVID. And it seems like that's kind of coming to a close. What do you envision? Have you already been seeing kind of an explosion of borrowers who can't pay it back, or anything like that? What do you envision?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think that there is a shakeup in this market because of the pandemic. You had people losing their jobs, stop paying their mortgages, but they lost their jobs for reasons that were pretty external to their own circumstances. So a lot of those people, we feel that even if they're still not paying, they probably want to get back on track, or they're at least employable. They didn't lose it because of their own decisions. Right. But we do also see those forbearance programs that have helped those people bridge that section, and they might tack on the payments on the end. They might work out a loan modification. We see more banks actually dabbling in more loan modifications now than we did before. But there is probably going to be an increase in supply and default mortgages that are coming out. And I hope that those borrowers are even a little bit more ready to get the help that they need to be able to keep that home. Because the banks will do a certain amount, but realistically, like, they're just in the money making game. And that's pretty much it. Yeah. And I do think even that there might be kind of like a middleman market where the banks will start selling these mortgages that have loan modifications on them. And that's a little bit of like a a stain on the record. So even if that borrower, even if it's a performing note now, that there had to be a loan modification in there. There was this period of time where that borrower wasn't paying. So the bank sort of, it's like a bad taste in their mouth to still have that on their books. So I think that those are going to be sold. Now, you don't need to do nearly as much work because that borrower is back on track making payments. So they won't be as steeply discounted, but it could be a really good way, when you're buying a large note pool, if there's loan modifications in there that the bank wants to get rid of, those are just like income generators that really help out with, to stabilize returns in a fund. And then you can work on these, like the harder ones where it's non-performing and you're working out new terms where you can, higher upside potentially in the end too. So
do you typically hold the notes for the duration of the period, like the 15-year, 30-year, or do you, how is it making money for you on your end? Is it through higher interest rates? I'm just curious how that works.
Great question.
As a business policy for you to be.
Yeah, great question. Well, if we have a non-performing note and we get that borrower back on track with payments, we usually have them pay for 12 months. By that time, the note is called seasoned. It means that borrower is, has a good track record of making those payments. So that's now a performing note. And we typically sell those. And we sell those to fellow investors. We might sell them to, just kind of on the open market in different ways. And that is worth a lot more than it was in the beginning. Again, it's like the fix and flip of that. So we tend to get rid of those. We may hold on to something a little bit longer if it's making a good return. But if the returns come from the fact that so much of the interest is paid up front. Mm-hmm. So most borrowers refinance or pay out or sell or move within the first 7 to 10 years of their mortgage, even if it's a 30-year, even if it's a 15-year. And the banks collect more of their interest. If you look at the amortization table, most of your payments in those first 7 years are interest. So you're not paying down the balance of that loan nearly as much. So if we only own the note for the first 2 years of its 30-year duration, we're actually making the bulk, like a good amount of the return, a disproportionate amount of the return than you would if you kept it for the whole 30 years. Now, there's definitely borrower, investors that keep these notes for 30 years because they can be really easy. But it's actually really great when you get a payoff because you can, as long as you put that money back into something else, it's a great yield.
Very clever.
And in a case where, a foreclosure just has to happen, you guys would retain that deed and then sell that home, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's our primary goal, is to just sell it either at auction or to fellow investors, through the realtors that we've gotten to help us out in the beginning. We'll list it with them. Certainly, it's a really hot seller's market right now. So it's actually... people love foreclosed homes. I think that there's a lot of investors hoping that there's more foreclosed homes out there, or just at least that the price drops. So that's a pretty good thing. But we do that. We could hold it. We could turn it into a rental. We could fix and flip it. We could do all those things. But honestly, we are in the note field and we want to do notes. We want to sell that asset and we want to get the capital back working in notes. I think that that's one thing that I've learned and I love and I lean on a lot, is like the one thing. And my one thing right now is notes. It's there's like a lot of candy out there I want to chase. I'd love to have some more Airbnbs. I'd love to, have a few of these, but I think that once you have that freedom to be able to say, this is just for fun and I can just do this and I have the extra time to be able to do it, I'm excited to expand it out more.
Right. And I think you make a good point. When you find something that works well for you and you like doing it, you should stick with that. Don't diversify too much, because then sometimes you spread yourself thin. For a while, we were doing Amazon FBA and we were doing, other little side sales and businesses, and we were doing our real estate and this and that. And we kind of decided, it's all fun and great, but let's focus our attention, because we're spending too much time in all these areas and we're not creating passive income. We're creating
jobs for
a whole bunch of different jobs for ourselves.
Exactly.
And that was not the point from the get-go, right?
Yeah. And it's usually and suddenly I'm not spending nearly enough time with my partner and my kids. And
exactly.
you think, oh, okay. Yeah, that's why we focus on one thing. And it's just back in balance.
But yeah, it's so hard. You see all those shiny objects everywhere. Like, ooh, that looks so fun.
Oh my gosh.
I'd like
so
to try
hard.
that and that.
But like you said, bring it back to why you're doing it, that financial freedom for the family, that we both share that purpose.
Right.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
So maybe we'll shift our conversation here, if you're ready to shift.
Yeah, I mean, is there any? I feel like I got all my questions answered. Is there anything that you think listeners should know more about in terms of, maybe your company, like how they would get involved if they wanted to be, if they were interested?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I put out a lot of education materials. I try to do a lot of videos and like really good content and newsletters because I want investors to understand notes. I think it's a little bit more of a hurdle to understand it. But once you understand it and you can see kind of how easy it is or how passive it can be if you partner with someone, which is a great way to learn. You're not necessarily getting worse returns than you would do if you got it on, did it on your own because of the time involved in it. So I put out a lot of education. So go to flowstateinvesting.com and check that out. Sign up for our investor circle, and then you'll get a link to schedule a call with me. And that's, just like in my river days, like building relationships is why I love doing the things that I do and talking to people and kind of being on the journey together and getting to do things together and like helping people have that transformational experience. When I took people down the river and I continue to take people down the river, it just like blows their mind, the kinds of things that we can see and do and the experience. And I feel like there's a part of me that's loving helping investors get into real estate for the same reason. Right. So I'm open to questions. Definitely sign up for that call and schedule a call with me.
And the website's flowstateinvesting.com?
It is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you can find me on Instagram at She Seeks Flow as well. And I'll respond to direct messages there.
Cool. One final question. Right now I feel like it's kind of harder to get into what we really like is house hacking. But now all the lenders seem to want 20% down, where before we got in at 10%. I mean, you could do the FHA thing, but with the competition out there, a lot of sellers are just like, I'm not going to do FHA. Someone's going to give me cash. So I'm just wondering, like 20% down in our area usually means you're bringing at least $60,000 to the table if you want anything, plus $10,000 for closing costs. So you have to bring $70,000 to the table to get into, house hacking. Mm-hmm. What is kind of the entry for you guys? Like, could someone come in with 10,000 and be a player, or does it have to be, what's kind of the
That's a good question.
Threshold, yeah.
Yeah, our starter partnership amount is $50,000, and that's because we look for assets around that amount. Now, if we put out a partnership call, we try to do them all at one time so we can buy notes in bulk, but they're all individualized into different partnerships. We may find an asset that's a little bit cheaper that looks good, but we don't typically go for the assets that are $6,000, that are $10,000. But there's some courses out there that will teach you how to find those and evaluate those. I like noteinvestor.com with Fred and Tracy. They do a good job of just kind of how to kind of get into notes a little bit on your own. And that's more on the performing note side. So you're not going to be doing the heavy due diligence lift, which is a huge form of due diligence that you have to do on top of just normal due diligence for investing. So you can get in lower, but we find that they're just less quality assets. And so we have a $50,000 minimum.
So you like the $50,000 mark for entry into these different
And is it
loans?
More worth your time just because of the higher amount and so higher interest rate too? And or not interest rate, but return. Yeah. And you find that the underlying asset is higher quality typically in that case too. You find that people kind of take better care of their houses when they have a little bit more equity in it, when it's a little bit higher value. So we typically go for those. I think that the assets that we find that are less than that are a little bit riskier. Mm-hmm. And if we're doing JV partnerships, we're not going to go into the higher risk area. We're going to ones that we just kind of like our bread and butter.
What is a JV partnership?
The joint venture partnership. Yeah, that's a nice way to get into real estate investing if you can find someone who's wanting to do joint ventureship. It's an active form of a partnership, but you just have to have some sort of role in the management of that asset. And for us, that means jumping on a call and we can discuss kind of what we're doing as our next steps. But you don't, it doesn't mean lots and lots of your time. But it's a great way to get in and not have, you don't have to be an accredited investor. Typically people have different thresholds. We have to talk to you several times to be able to do it, to make sure that you understand what this is that we're doing. And then it fits, because it is a partnership at that point. It's not just a number in a capital raise in some sort of big multifamily investment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So does that actually mean like an LLC partnership you form with every single client?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. And we work in a series LLC. So we have a kind of a a parent LLC, and each one of our JV partnerships is under there. So it's actually a pretty seamless structure to be able to get it all done.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, this is very intriguing, but I feel like we got the bulk of it. And if people want to know more, go to flowstateinvesting.com, watch your videos. But there's so much other stuff here that I want to dig into.
So you found note investing as your key to financial freedom. When did you get into it, and how has it opened up your lifestyle to more possibilities in a way that you feel a lot more fulfilled in where you're at right now?
Yeah, great question. When I started doing it, I realized that I could back off my W-2 hours. And instead of saying, well, then I'll just work harder in my business, I sort of said, I want to live the life now that I'm working towards. I want to spend more time with my daughter. I want to travel more. I want to go on multi-day trips into the wilderness, go on multi-day rafting trips, kayaking trips, camping with my daughter and my husband. And I don't want to wait. And, I was always really appalled by the entrepreneurs who said, like, I just had to put my head down for 10 years and not, eat dinner with my family ever. I just, that's not a question for me. That's like not compromising that. So, but what I did find that, like, once I started doing that, once I said, these are my priorities, my family, my health, my fitness, being physically outdoors is really important for me and my mental health. Keeping up a spiritual practice is really important for me and my mental health. And it's like, once you start allowing yourself to do those, you find yourself even more effective in all areas of your life. So I feel like by like taking on the note investing, trusting that I'm going to where I'm going to go, where I'm fully financially free, but being able to say, this is going so well that I'm actually going to give myself more freedom now has been a huge gift, and helped me in my business, be more effective in the hours that I'm spending there.
Was it a hard conversation to have with your employer about, hey, I want to cut back on my hours? How did that go over? Because I think a lot of people wonder that, like, well, I don't even think my job would be flexible to me not doing 40 hours a week. How did that play out for you?
That's a good question. I have a really great employer. And so I think the pandemic helped with that too, where we all got kind of thrown off our normal schedules, and we all had to spend more time with our kids because we didn't have any childcare or daycare, and we all sort of didn't have to commute then. And so you have all of these new equations happening with your time, and you learn that you really do value that time. And I don't want to commute anymore. And so it was easier to have that conversation with my employer at that point. And I think even if you didn't experience that, you should still be able to feel like you go to your employer and say, like, this is kind of a new world now. And this is how I want to live my life. And I think employers are more willing to listen to that these days. And know, you just also have to trust that, like, I probably get just as much work done in 30 hours than I did in 40.
Right.
So there's an element there too, where, like, I'm not, if you're not happy, if you're not spending every day and you have moments where you're like, this is exactly where I want to be and what I want to be doing, then you're not effective in the other areas of your life. And so if you can communicate that to your boss, and sort of say, like, I need to do this so that I'm happy and fulfilled, but so that I can give more here too. I don't see, if they say no, then maybe it's time for a career change too, and to be around more positive people.
So Susan, I know you're a good negotiator. Because I saw in your bio you got your college to waive your master's degree tuition. How did you manage that?
Oh my gosh, that was a fun one. So I did all of the grant writing. I've gotten fellowships and grants to pay for my master's degree. I even deferred a year so that I could get better funding, because I was like, I'm not paying for graduate school. There's plenty of funding out there, especially for females in STEM careers, so in engineering. And what I did is I got a fellowship, which was just a living stipend, but it was plenty of a living stipend. And it was from the American Association of University Women. And that organization is a very prestigious national organization. And I saw that my other fellow students were getting fellowships, or there were other fellowships out there from NSF or these other sort of prestigious national institutions. And they would get a fellowship, and then OSU would waive tuition based on that fellowship. So I pitched to OSU. I said, basically, like, this is a prestigious organization that specifically helps women in STEM careers. It's just as valuable for you to have a student who's received this grant, this prestigious award, and it's all selling it too, of like,
Right.
And I said, I believe that means that you should also waive my tuition. And they did it. I was shocked. So I essentially doubled the value of the fellowship by doing that.
That is awesome.
See, you never know unless you ask.
Yeah.
Everything is negotiable.
Yeah.
Everything is negotiable.
It's 100% no until you ask.
Right.
And then when you ask, you're all of a sudden 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That is fantastic.
That is awesome.
There's been so many times in our time together as a couple where he just asks something to me that's like, oh, you can't ask that. That's too outlandish, for like a bargain of some sort. And he asks because he's like, well, there's no harm in asking. And if I don't ask, I don't have an opportunity. And he does negotiate it. And it just blows my mind every single time. Like, wow, I need to get over my own personal concepts because it's limiting a lot of potential.
Or tens of thousands of dollars in this situation.
Limiting beliefs. Yeah. What fun that you have a partner that can kind of demonstrate that to you and push you a little bit too. I bet you've grown a little bit too over that time period and saying, well, yeah, why not?
Yep. Never hurts to ask. Worst thing you can do is say
exactly.
no.
That was kind of like how we got our book deal too. We wanted to paddle 50 wild and scenic rivers for the 50th anniversary of the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act in 2018. And I was graduating school, which to me sounds like a great tuition to go on a big adventure trip, or not a great tuition, a great time, a great transition to go on a big adventure trip before I get my job, before I'm locked down. Right. And we thought, how are we going to pay for this? And someone was like, well, you could write a blog and 50 blogs and sell that blog to someone. And someone just said, well, like, why don't you write a book with 50, something. And so I was like, okay. And I reached out to Falcon Guides, which is like the guidebook company, and pitched it to them. And it just is like, I would never have thought to write a book about it. And that's what happened. We produced this beautiful 300-page full color guidebook. And yeah.
That is fantastic. And you were doing that as you were going through your trip, I guess. You were notating and taking pictures and just documenting your journeys.
Yeah, you said
Exactly.
2 years full-time RVing, right?
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. So we started earlier. We started in like 2016, and my last year of master's, we lived in the RV, and in people's yards, essentially. And I think we had to rent for 2 months in there when all of our pipes froze in the RV at one point. But so we kind of started stacking up that with the idea that we just wanted to paddle 50 rivers. But the guidebook, we paddled 50, but the guidebook is a different 50. There's about 35 or 40 that overlap, but we wanted to get in some like really iconic ones that we couldn't make it to, because at the same time, I was also carrying my daughter in utero on many of the rivers. And so at some point I gave birth to her, and then I gave birth to the book right afterwards. But so we could take her on some of them after she joined us in the physical form. And but it was still a neat way to like have a scrapbook. And then we worked with other people in the river communities to fill in the gaps of photos and stuff.
I love that. And with everything else that you've done too, just that you have this passion, and through it you are sharing all the inspiration and all the knowledge you learn along the way with others, making it easier for them to kind of follow in your footsteps. I think guidebooks are so helpful. When we took our trip to Utah most recently, it was the guidebooks we got out of the library that really helped steer our
Especially
path.
because there's no cell data there.
Couldn't follow GPS, so we're reading the book and we're like, it says to go down this road,
Yeah,
But,
exactly. Yeah,
awesome.
I do. That is the guide in me. I just I love watching that transformation take place.
What is the guidebook called, and where can you find it?
It's called Paddling America, Discover and Explore the Nation's 50 Greatest Wild and Scenic Rivers. But you can just search Paddling America and find it on Amazon. It's at many REIs, different bookstores. It has, of all the 50 rivers that they picked for the cover shot, it's my local White Salmon River.
Hey,
Wow.
nice.
Really happy about. So a beautiful green river shot with fun kayakers in the front. And it's for rafting and canoeing and kayaking from flat water. And there's some fun photos of some harder rivers in there too. But it's a nice way. It's like aspirational in that way. So everyone can find a river trip in there that is would be fun for them. But there's also some fun rivers in there where maybe you might say like, whoa, that looks really big and scary. And
Maybe
I may
when
never
I'm
do that.
more advanced.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Do you
awesome.
have a favorite river from your 50 river tour?
You know, I get asked that every time. And my answer is always the Middle Fork Feather River in, I'm sorry, Middle Fork Flathead River in Montana. I haven't been asked in a while. That's why I kind of forgot that. In Montana. And it was the adventure too. I mean, it's a pristine, gorgeous river. It's one of the original ones. So it was protected long ago, it was recognized that it needed to be set aside and protected. But we hiked in with pack rafts in our backpack. So we hiked in and up over the pass with all of our pack rafting gear in backpacks. Wow. And then we floated down for 4 days with our backpacks kind of strapped to the front of these pack rafts. A pack raft is a small inflatable kayak, but they're made for essentially backpacking with. So wow, they fold down to the size of, you know, I want to say a small baby, a very small size. And so you can put them in backpacks and people explore really remote regions in them. So it's a fun, it also just makes me giggle the whole way down because of the way it floats. But that was a really beautiful one and a great, like, kind of adventurous way to access it.
Yeah, you've been wanting to go to Montana forever. We gotta make our way out there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get to do some fun, big adventures with my daughter and family. You know, I think about this phase of my life as a little bit more, you know, in one place. We're certainly going out and doing rafting trips and traveling, but it's fun to be building something, you know, building towards spending 6 months on the road, spending time traveling, being able to go and do runs in the Alps and Europe and backpack between shelters in South America and really like use wilderness. And I like how you said wild schooling, because I think about world schooling a lot, but I'm like, I want to do world schooling, but in the wilderness. And so that's wild schooling.
There's an awesome Facebook group called Wild Schooling, and it's just awesome, the feed that goes through there, and like people, like little kids, like exploring nature and discovering all these awesome things. Just awesome parents. They're really doing like unusual, unconventional things that are learning. Just awesome.
Yeah. I'll have to find that. That's a good.
But I'm curious, you took your 7-month-old on a 5-day rafting trip. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that? And was that a good experience? How'd that go?
It was a really good experience for us. I think that, you know, it's like you just got to take your kids with you where you feel safe, where you want to go and where you felt safe before they were. And for us, being on the river is just very second nature for us. My husband has been guiding his whole life, and he started rafting when he was 6 months old. So it was sort of like, it was just a very natural thing for us. I could see how if you were just getting into rafting as you have kids, that might be a little bit more intimidating because you're also dealing with all these new systems that you have, but it was a little bit more second nature for us. But even that being said, you know, I've gone out there with friends who have never done a multi-day trip before, and they're out there with their young kids, and just having what you need and knowing that you don't need a lot is always really fun. It's, you know, the one thing I think was being away from cell reception. And so having some sort of sat phone or, you know, remote device that you can make calls out if there was a big emergency, that kind of thing. That was the one thing that, like, with an infant, but she was in good health. And so we did it, and it was really fun. And it just is like, it's a great relaxing pace to be on the river. And it reminds you as a parent that you are a person as well, and that, you know, you're getting fulfilled, and also you're there with your child getting fulfilled. It's not just, you know, we become new parents, and there's so much giving that takes place. There's so much being present for someone else that it's pretty easy to forget that we too need to feel present and feed our souls and feed ourselves, because then our children can see that they are allowed to do that as well. And so I think that being able to go in the outdoors on these trips, parents are showing their kids that, like, this is what I need too. And when you need something, you're allowed to ask for it too. You deserve that.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's so well put, because like I feel like so many times, parents are like, oh yeah, I did my fun thing, now it's time to hunker down and be there for the kids and take them to the soccer games and do that for them, that for them, that for them, that for them. But I feel like so much of the time, you really need to, and it's not just selfishly doing what you want, but show them what you're passionate in, get them passionate in it, and just have that awesome family bonding experience. Like we were sharing with you, we just went on that bike packing trip where we did 100 miles for the last 3 days, and
the kids
so
were along
amazing.
with us.
Yeah.
I really think, a lot of people, I think, deny themselves a lot of these possibilities.
Right.
They think, oh, I shouldn't do this because I have young
I'm
kids.
a father
or I
now.
can't do it because I have young kids. But I feel like, it's kind of a disservice to your children in a way if they see having kids is causing you to feel deprived in your life, and that's not a very positive image for them to look forward to being parents themselves one day, where they feel like they've got to give up what they love. And I feel like it is very possible to continue to lead the life that you love, and for your children to be right there by your side with you, and it's also very societal. I think that a lot of times in American society, or more advanced career-driven societies, there's this concept that like you can't do these things, that you have to follow the cookie cutter mold, and that stepping out of that is being irresponsible or taking unnecessary risks.
Right.
But I feel that if you know what you're doing, you handle it responsibly, it's a safe, rewarding, fulfilling thing that you're building such an incredible memory and moment with your entire family, and that's priceless.
Right. And it wasn't all just roses and sunshine, there was challenges in there, but I think that's so important. You don't just cater to your kids all the time. They go through these challenges, and now, they were tough. Sometimes they're like, let's call, grandpa to pick us up. And
it's raining.
It's raining.
Call grandpa.
Yeah, that was the running joke throughout the whole trip, because he dropped us off. But yeah, they go through the challenges, and now they know that they are physically able to do some crazy things. They've at 4 years old, he's done a triathlon already, and he knows he is capable. He knows he is strong. He knows he's able. He understands that in the everything.
Exactly. We underestimate the power of doing hard things, of having our kids do the hard things with us too, and that's when they learn and grow, is being in uncomfortable places. So if we continue to like, oh, this is the comfort zone, is my home, and we can't go out and do those things. Yeah, so much of that. I also don't want my daughter to see that I'm the kind of person that's like not living life the way that I want to. Like, and that's got to be internalized, of her saying like, well, something about me prevented my parents from living the way they wanted to live.
Right.
And that's not true at all. She's making my life better, if anything. And so,
Yeah, I think that's so key. It's sad a lot of times when you hear parents kind of bemoaning their lot in life, and and it's heartbreaking, because I'm like, well, that's not going to rub off well on your kids, and it's certainly not doing you any good either.
Well, thank you too for like the variety and podcast episodes that you have out here, to be able to show that, we can take on financial freedom and investing and tackle limiting beliefs with making money and retiring sooner, and just having more freedom in that way, because it rubs off on our families, because it rubs off on the other things we do with them. And then you have episodes that focus on those things, big bike trips, big camping trips, and just really showing ways that this is a holistic endeavor, being a family person, being an investor, all of that. So,
and it's reachable for every person in every state of finance,
exactly.
You don't have to be super rich to do these things. There's always ways to do the things you want to do.
Exactly.
Well, Susan, thank you so much for coming on the FamVestor podcast. It's been such a pleasure just talking to you about all the variety of subjects that we went through.
Such an awesome journey, and so many great golden nuggets.
But also a great learning experience for us, because we never heard about we heard about no investing, but we didn't know the details of it. So thanks for informing us. And so just to close us out again, where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, come and find me on flowstateinvesting.com. Sign up for our investor circle to schedule a call. That's the best way to learn about note investing. But you can find me on Instagram at She Seeks Flow, and then of course on LinkedIn and Facebook, all of those places. But yeah, to just kind of see the way that I live too. We like our partners to know who we are as people too. But I'd be happy to share more anytime. Reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan.
Yeah, thank you too, both so much. This is great fun.
Okay, Susan, so I just had one other question regarding, I know that when you go on travel, you Airbnb your own home. I wonder just how that got started, why you do it, and how that looks like.
Yeah, great question. This is a great thing to kind of add really simply without getting too focused off your one thing, but to bring in some income and pay for trips.
Yeah.
So I did it because I really like providing an experience for people. I like staying in Airbnbs.
Mm-hmm.
I like it when people provide little tips on where I can go get a good muffin, where I can do little things. They leave things out for me. And so when we moved into our house, I said, like, let's set things up so that we can Airbnb it. And what that looked like. So I have some good tips. First, look into the regulations in your area and your insurance policy, your home insurance policy. You may need to change your home insurance policy. I found out that mine allowed it for 31 days out of the year, which works for this year, but it probably won't work when I'm traveling for 6 months a year. So I might have to change that. 2, have lockable spaces. So we put locks on all our closets. We emptied our drawers of all personal things, put them in our closets. We put some other things in our closets. Our bathroom stuff into the closets. We also have an office that we lock up, which has our technology and stuff in it. So we put our bikes in the office, we put our stroller in the office, and we locked it up. So have a lockable space if you can, even if it's just one bedroom. But closets work really well too. And then, this really takes, the third thing I would say is that it's really great to have a little bit more of a minimalist and non-attachment lifestyle or thought as you are putting your home together or as you're standing in your home. Like, would I be so heartbroken if any one of these things disappeared from my life? And how much am I really attached to that couch? Would it destroy my life? And get to an absurd point with it. Like, would I cry? Would I be upset for weeks and weeks? And it turns into ridiculous at that point. And you're like, well, it's a couch, maybe I shouldn't be that attached to this material thing. And it really kind of shifts your philosophy as far as like, I have to be okay with the fact that something might get broken or destroyed. And, we put 1 or 2 pictures. We take down our personal pictures, which aren't that many, but, and we put them away, and we take one sort of image or a painting we got when we were in India, and we put that away. We really like that. But it's helped us to like keep clutter free. It's helped us to kind of like lead have a really healthy space, because it's like as nice as an Airbnb would be. So we don't have a lot of things, in other words. And I think that that's like a hidden benefit to renting your own space that people don't think of.
Yeah, that's awesome. One question, because I know like one big concern for us is, and I don't know why it's such a concern, because, we go to Airbnbs all the time. We use their used sheets, but, do you have like a second set of like bedding and sheets and pillowcases and things like that you switch out when it's being rented to guests, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do have a second set of sheets, and mostly just because I wanted to give them really clean, nice sheets.
Yeah.
I lived in my car for a decade, so I don't have the highest standard for cleanliness of things. I'm still wearing clothes that I had when I was in high school. So I definitely bought some new sheets, and I bought some new towels. And what's interesting is that sounds daunting, but really like the first rental paid for it. You kind of have to say like, we have a test period and we're going to make money in the beginning, but once you get those things, you have them, and then you can rinse and repeat later on. Same for like little amenities. We got like little mouthwash packets and some razors and things that just like brighten people's day. Again, it's like giving that experience to someone. And I bought boxes of crayons for the kids. And what's nice too is, go with a certain theme, but like play up to your own house. So we have this like river adventure theme in our house, as you might have guessed. And we also have good kids supplies. So I advertise it. It's a very kid-friendly place to go. And I would love to show up somewhere with a great high chair, a kid's drawing table, a pack of crayons, a set of Magnetiles. Oh my gosh, that's so great. So we give that to people too. So it's a nice feeling being able to know that kids can have fun here.
That's awesome.
That's really great. And you make a good point, because I remember when we started our Airbnb, I was a little overwhelmed at first. at the initial cost at buying supplies for it. I'm like, oh my gosh, we've spent $1,000 on bedding and blankets and pillows and
and then you see how much money you can generate and you're like,
right.
Oh.
And I was worried.
Yeah.
I'm like, what if we don't recoup this? But it's actually a very quick turnaround.
So how has it been? Like, so you go on vacation for a week and then you rent it for a week. Does it break even? Like, what does it look like for you?
Good question. We usually make more money than we spend,
Nice.
Which is nice. And because we're also, using airline miles to travel, and we're also just living on the river for 5 days, which doesn't cost, we're not paying for hotels and places. We're camping in the back of our truck. So we leave a really basic, simple lifestyle when we're vacationing right now anyways. So we definitely make money, which is fun. We don't like to rent it for shorter than a week long. And I say that we have a minimum of 2 nights, but unless we're going to be gone for at least a week, we won't rent it out just because of the sort of like putting everything away, locking everything up. But we do have a cleaner come in before the person gets here so that it's just like kind of professionally cleaned before we have a guest in there. But it encourages us to like take more longer vacations or go and remote work at grandma's house and spend more time away. So it's harder for us to deploy for like a weekend, but we can do a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks pretty easy.
Do you have the home cleaned before you get home, or do you end up doing a lot of that yourself?
I've done it both ways. And I typically, I think that from now on, I'll probably not have it cleaned before we get home. And I'm screening my guests a little bit more. I have conversations with them before they book because it's our primary home. That's one thing. I don't have it so that people can just auto book it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And I ask them to say, this is my primary residence and I really want to get to know people a little bit more. Can you provide a little bit more information about yourself? And I said, it would be really helpful also if you had a public profile or a public website that I could check out. For instance, like if you have a job and you have an About Us page where you're featured, that's a great way to say it. I'm not asking for any private or personal accounts by any means. And so they do tell me a little bit more about themselves. And if they say no, they don't have it or they don't have any reviews, then I politely decline and say that we need a little bit more information. So I do know a little bit more about the people, and I just feel like they're less likely to terrorize my place. But
yeah, that's a great tip because especially we live in this neighborhood and we don't want them to have parties and then offend the neighbor next door and then create bad relationships. But yeah, doing that screening because in our other Airbnb, we just kind of allow everyone as long as they have a certain threshold with reviews and things like that. But yeah, we'd probably want a little more due diligence because we're thinking at Airbnb our own place.
And it is your home,
right?
So you are a lot more sensitive to who you allow into that space.
Yeah, I'm curious. You said you want to recommend like the best coffee shop in the area. How do you do that? Is that like a booklet you give? Is there a video like to intro staying here? What do you do?
Yeah, great question. There is a way now Airbnb offers kind of a platform for you to provide a virtual guidebook. So I've got some places in there if they're on their phone and they just want to like see the link to the bakery, to the playground, to that kind of stuff. And mostly those are like businesses that I can link to. But I also print out, I just use canva.com for doing basic kind of really beautiful graphic design stuff. I use that in Flow State Investing. I use it in all my businesses. I use it for send out birthday invitations. It's really fun. It makes anyone can be a graphic designer with Canva. But so I'll just create a 3-page or 4-page PDF. And I actually have it framed in things that I just kind of put out on a table so that they can reference it, and then a handheld copy too, that if they wanted to take it with them. And I feel like once they're in the house and they know where they are in relationship to where town is, because we're very walkable to downtown in this tiny town I live in, which is a really beautiful tourist town. Then they can kind of have more of they can just look at things. I don't know. Anytime I can get someone off their phone is a good thing too.
Yeah.
So
yes.
Yeah. I provide a little bit, but again, it's that upfront time. And now it's just kind of set. I have to make sure it's updated, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Good tips there.
Yeah. Those are great tips.
I love I love that you have a very themed Airbnb.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's such a cool concept. And it makes me think of all the travels we've been on and just, you go to these beautiful places too. And you're sort of like, I want to I want to set up a space like that, but then it's sometimes like harder to do it in your own home, but to have like a clean slate, a blank canvas to do it and create that experience for people. We spent so much time in China, and I think about providing, Chinese little sauces and spices to people and having different, but the Japanese one is neat because it's very stylistic for beds and tables and, all of the things. So,
I'm
very cool.
surprised
You've given me some ideas for that too.
I'm surprised how many people love like sleeping on the floor and using the bidet for the first time.
We had in our guest book, someone wrote just recently, they're like, I used a bidet for the first time in your Airbnb. My life has changed forever.
Perfect. See, you're changing lives.
Yeah. So there's so much enjoyment that comes from creating like an awesome, unique space that people love and enjoy. And I feel like where we live now, there's so much that we enjoy that we'd love to share with others as well. And, also that if we have that income coming in and, okay, let me just vacation more because I'm making more money when I vacation than I am being at home. So it's just like a win-win-win.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really fun once we're traveling a lot more too. And I love it. I'm excited to do more.